And now, weighing in out of the blue corner, Josh the Pug Thompson. 100% agree. And on the other mic, he weighs in from the red corner, Big John McCarthy.
We decided we're not doing introductions anymore. Everyone knows who the hell you are. Everyone knows who the hell I am. So, Big John, Josh Thompson, but I just introduced us anyways.
You just did it. Just had to do it.
Look, what I have to do, though, is I have to sit here and talk to you about today. Let's talk about Twitter. Let's talk about you and Ariel Helwani. Let's talk about the Chuck and Tito 30 for 30. Let's talk about the text exchange or just the back and forth on Twitter or whatever it was. Big John, break it down to me. BJPenn.com had even posted like the whole Twitter beef or whatever it was. Just obviously Ariel's not part of this show, but I have you in front of me. Break it down. Tell me what irked you off so much for you to write a comment? Because this is not you. This is not you. You like to give people your opinion, but the way it ended up transpiring on Twitter. This is not the normal Big John McCarthy that I'm used to seeing.
I think I hurt Ariel's feelings. So
you wouldn't be the first one.
I don't think I am. And look, I did not. It was funny because I'm watching that 30 for 30. I was on the 30 for 30. I did the taping for him and stuff. And as I'm watching it, and I hear something that Ariel says that is the static line that Zuffa came up with long ago of Dana and Lorenzo sit there and talk about, we saw the UFC. We were going to the shows, and we saw this diamond in the rough, and we knew that, they were doing things right. They were running from regulation, and we knew that if we ran towards regulation, that was the way to get this sport growing. And that's a nice story, but it's bullshit. All right. And so when I heard Ariel say, when Zuffa bought it, they ran towards regulation. It pissed me off because this is a guy that I respect. I respect Ariel. He's done a lot in this sport. But, I'm just going to be flat out the way I look at it. He was in journalism college when I was in court trying to save the sport and the UFC. There's a lot of things that he has no idea that took place, and people that did things to help save the sport of MMA. And when you just validate, because Ariel has a huge following, and a lot of people respect his opinion, and I respect his opinion. And when he validates an absolute falsehood, a lie of, the old UFC was running from regulation, that was the John McCain, and then the new, better Zuffa comes in, and they ran towards regulation. Well, both of those are just not true. I'm not saying that Dana and Lorenzo did not try to continue towards working towards regulators to get, the MMA, the UFC, into more states. But I was first licensed as a referee back at UFC 15 in Mississippi. That was the first time I ever had to, fill out an application, the first time I had to pay money for a license to get licensed by a state athletic commission because they regulated the UFC. And the reason that happened, there's a long story behind it. But yes, the UFC was in trouble. There was a lot of people trying to shut it down. They had been taken off of cable. All right. And you had a guy named Leo Hendry who was in charge of the biggest cable company provider at the time, which was part of Time Warner, and it became Time Warner. But I actually went to a meeting in Denver, Colorado with him and presented him with the actual first set of real rules for the sport. And one of them, he was big into, you allow groin shots because we did. You allow headbutting. They don't allow that in boxing. So I brought him a complete, set. It was 18 fouls that were the rules of MMA. to try to get him to realize, hey, this is a real sport. We are looking at it like a real sport.
And this was before the
Fertittas.
This is before the Fertittas?
This is after UFC 14.
Okay.
And his statement at the time to Bob Meyerowitz, who was the owner of Semaphore, to me, and to Art Davey, who was kind of Bob's matchmaker at the time, the guy who actually was the founder of the UFC, was, look, you want to get back on cable, you have to get regulated. You have to have the state athletic commissions sanction. If you don't have that done, I cannot allow you on cable.
Yeah. So
the first thing that they started trying to do was find some place where they could start to get regulated. And Mississippi was the first one, and Iowa became them. And even before Zuffa was ever part of the picture, the UFC at 28 was in New Jersey. The state of New Jersey regulated it. So when you're sitting there saying that, what made it happen is they ran towards regulation, and that was what Zuffa did, when he said it, I'm looking at him saying, how does someone that is supposed to be a journalist, someone who's supposed to look for facts, someone that is supposed to actually get to the truth, how do you perpetuate that story? And I was wrong. I'm telling you, I know right now. I should have texted him. I didn't think about it. I do have his number. And I should have just texted him or called him and said, hey, man, you realize what you're saying there? But the first thing I could think of, well, he's on Twitter, and I know he'll be on it. And so I went to Twitter, and I gave the thing and saying, I can't believe someone that knowledgeable would put out that kind of statement. If you don't know, ask for the truth.
Yeah.
And he took it wrong. He took it like I was attacking him, and I wasn't trying to attack him. I'm just trying to get it to where the history has been, a lot of people have tried to rewrite the history of what really happened with the sport. Unfortunately for a lot of people, I'm still around. And I was there from the goddamn beginning. And they could all tell their stories any way they want. But I was there, and I know. And I know all the secrets. I know all the horrible things people did. And I don't talk about them because, hey, you know what? That's life. But when I have something and I'm watching it on ESPN, and yeah, Ariel works for ESPN. And yes, the ESPN carries the UFC, and I understand that. And this is not me being against the UFC. I'm not. I love the UFC. This is me being against someone perpetuating a myth. And that's where I got mad. So that was why I tweeted out. I didn't tweet out trying to attack him, but I think he took it that way.
I've had run-ins with Ariel several times, just me and myself, and he's confronted me several times about how, Josh, I know you don't like me, and it's like, no, Ariel, it has nothing to do with that. I think that there's a miscommunication between the fact that, when I don't like when you print something, doesn't mean that I don't like you. And he has sometimes that kind of feel when you talk to him, that the feeling is that you have to, if you don't agree with what he's saying or what he writes about you or your opponent or your friends, then you automatically don't like him. And that's not true. I don't mind him. I don't mind him at all. I mean, I do understand, you have to be, I have learned to be cautious with what I talk to him about on his show or any other show that I've ever done with him. But to talk about what you're talking about, we see that now amongst all media, though. Would you be correct that it's good to be first and good to just write a retraction later on the back page so no one understands, because they're going to believe what I say the first time.
No one looks there.
No one looks on the back page. So and I'm not saying that he does that all the time, but it just so happened that you caught him doing it this time, or you know the history of it that he didn't know. He spoke.
He doesn't know the history. He wasn't there. And there's so many things, Josh, I don't talk about, but I know them all. I know where all the skeletons are. And I don't attack anyone, but there's reasons why Dana wants to have this story put forward. And I don't blame him. And I'm not saying he's a bad person for doing it. It's just that a lot of it's false. And it's a story that they came up with. It's his side that he wants to perpetuate. And the MMA media continues to perpetuate that because Dana has been able to control the MMA media. He did a fantastic job of scaring the hell out of him years ago, and he got rid of SureDog, made sure no SureDog reporters could be at a UFC, and all of these guys started sucking up to him, and oh, you know what? And anything he would say, that was gospel.
Yep.
They don't look into it. They don't check it out. They just take it for fact.
Yep.
And that's where I have a problem, and that's what I'm looking at. When I looked at that, I was like, you're because someone said something, you're just putting it back out there. And I have to admit, I don't know the context of everything that was, actually said by Ariel at that time when he was doing the videotaping of it, because obviously they're asking him a question, and they can edit things, and it can actually look one way when he was bringing it up another. So I'm not mad at him in any fashion. He then brought up, well, it was, the whole Mark, then, they brought in Mark Ratner, and it's like, dude, they brought Mark Ratner in 6 years later. Stop. Yeah. You have no idea what you're talking about. Again, you're showing me you don't know what really occurred. And so I have this thing about why is it that the truth is so hard for people to find out? There's people out there that know it. Ask them.
Do you feel that it is a couple things? He works for ESPN. UFC is part of ESPN, and he needs to provide. He needs to provide the talking points in which Dana has provided for all these years. And when he does that, you're just spewing really what the organization would like people to know about them.
That's
not
right.
From the beginning, but from when they took over and when the success started happening. What I did like, though, was that they painted the picture kind of after the fact that the UFC was dead in the sand kind of thing. It was one of those things. But then in the very beginning of the show, you have to recall, we had 80,000 pay-per-view buys. Then they had like 190 or something. And then they went to like 300,000 or something. That's insane.
Over 300.
Yeah, they had over 300. That's insane considering, and I'm going to give this, we've had current UFCs that I think it was the Stephen Thompson and Wonder Boy. They only did 180 or 104 something like that.
They've had recent ones that didn't break 100.
That's insane to me.
Yeah.
To me, that's insane. You have current, and I know that the model of pay-per-view is kind of dying. I'm not trying to compare the two oranges to apple. It's like I understand that. But at that time, you're talking about a relatively new sport that people just all of a sudden gravitated to. It wasn't like it was a shitty sport. They had a product, and they knew they had a product that they could sell. It was a matter of just doing, and I did understand. I saw parts of when I was watching the 30 for 30 and the Chuck and Tito 30 for 30. They were talking about parts where they were trying to get the regulations in certain places, and you had, like you said, John McCain.
Chuck, they brought up Chuck. Now, Tito Ortiz fought when there was no regulation for the UFC. His first fight, it was, I believe, UFC 13. That was his first fight against a guy named Wes Albrighton. Mm-hmm. All right. He didn't even get paid for it because he was a college athlete at the time, and he said he couldn't get paid. But Chuck Liddell's first fight was at UFC 17. That was a regulated show. I was licensed. He was licensed as a fighter. He fought a guy named Noe Hernandez from Iowa, and that's all regulated. So they're showing this whole thing about back when, Chuck was, brand new in the UFC. It was regulated then. It wasn't that, those people weren't running towards regulation, because those people were running towards regulation because it was the only way they could keep the sport alive. They knew it, and they were working at it. And that went all the way up. And I could tell you the dirty story that occurred in trying to get into Nevada. But, Lorenzo Fertitta bought the UFC. He was actually sitting on the Nevada State Athletic Commission just before that and would have voted on was it going to get legalized or not. You figure out what happened.
Yeah. And then he turned around and bought it.
Yep.
And shortly after, a couple of years later, Mark Ratner had left and started working for them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it's almost, I feel, I'm not trying to. I guess I am kind of trying to put the two things. The Golden Snitch works for USADA, but for some reason,
name.
yeah, Brendan Schaub, the Golden Snitch works for USADA, but seems like everyone seems to think he works for the UFC. You know, it's kind of like that.
No, he does. He does work. He used to work, you know, with USADA. He works. Jeff Nowitzki works for the UFC now.
Okay.
He is the guy in charge of the USADA program for the UFC.
But he used to work for USADA.
Yes.
Makes
He's the guy that ended up catching Lance Armstrong. So Lance Armstrong and him have a very good relationship.
Well, what took him so long to catch Lance? What took him so long?
It's no different than what's occurring now. You know, the testing has gotten so much better.
Yeah.
And what they can do now with it, it's a different story, and it finally caught up to Lance.
Mm-hmm. So you're just upset over the fact that the facts weren't portrayed in the way that they should have been portrayed, and they were spoken by Ariel. The non-facts are spoken by Ariel. And when you reached out on Twitter to tell him that he was wrong, like researched a little bit more before you're a journalist. And to me, honestly, like I feel like even though despite I've had problems with him, he's always been pretty on point with the things that he does. And the fact that him and Dana had a falling out kind of made me like him a little bit more. So, so when he started, like, you know, I see things that he does, and I actually do like a lot, like his show. I do enjoy some of his other stuff, his articles that he had originally like started on doing. He's good. I do enjoy some of his content and his stuff.
I honestly believe, first off, he's a good guy. I like Ariel. You know, there is no animosity towards him at all. I like Ariel. I would do anything for him right now. I think he's a good reporter. Mm. You know, I think he's a great interviewer. He asks good questions. Mm-hmm. I just look and say, man, if you're gonna be that guy, because he's been anointed as, you know, how many times has he won the Journalist of the Year award with the MMA awards and stuff? If you're gonna be that guy, then make sure that the information that you know is right.
I mean, for Christ's sake, you work for ESPN and you represent our sport. You're basically the face of journalism for our sport.
And you're right. Like he was, you know, he's been on the other side of Dana. He got kicked out by Dana.
Yeah.
You know, do you remember what that was for?
No, I don't. Oh, for what?
Yeah. We were at UFC 199, and they were hiding the fact that Brock Lesnar was going to fight at UFC 200, and Ariel tweeted it out. And that sent Dana over the edge. And all of a sudden, Ariel was in the parking lot at the Forum in Inglewood, California, not allowed to come back in. and I feel bad for him because he lost a lot doing that.
I talked to some of my friends that work at ESPN also, and they were saying that Dana was actually trying to get him released from ESPN when they did the deal. He had requested.
He won't forget.
He had requested that, do we have to have Ariel work and cover the sport with you guys or through you guys? And they had basically said, yeah, we have a contract with him. So, yeah, strange. Anyways, I mean, so you're not mad at him. You were just kind of upset you a little bit, and that's kind of how
I'm not mad at him. I just want the truth of what occurred to make the sport of MMA actually, you know, survive, to grow. You know, there's a lot of reasons why it did. And it went through a lot of hard times. The fact that the internet was brand new, that's why MMA survived. That was the thing that kept it going, because people could get on this computer and talk about the sport and say when it was going to be and all these different things. I'm not saying that regulation didn't make it grow. It did. But people kept the sport alive. It was the fans.
People need to understand how popular the underground forums were back then for MMA. I mean, hey, there's a fight in Calusa in Northern California, and people were like, what's that? It's a casino in the middle of bumfucked Egypt. You know, remember the
Eagle Mountain's got one. Yep.
You know what I mean? I mean, look at Lemoore. Lemore's in the middle of nowhere. So, I mean, like, you would hear about all these things on the underground forums, that were just publicly, you'd get over the internet. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the sport is alive a lot, mainly because of the internet, and yeah, I mean, you're right. I just feel like we live in a society now where people would rather be first than right, and they would rather write a retraction than be right the first time. And then a lot of the times when they work for a company, they become company people, which is fine. But the problem is they're spewing just the punchlines of just regurgitated punchlines for whatever company they're working for. And it's not factual. And that's upsetting, especially from someone that like Ariel Helwani, who's covered a lot of top fights. The Mayweather and Conor fight. I mean, the Khabib and Conor, like all these good top fights, and it's upsetting to see someone like him not do the research a little bit more to back up his information.
Yeah, but I just look at it. There's guys, there's people that other people forget about, and some of them they're gone from us now. They've died, but there were people that did a lot to help the sport of MMA actually survive.
Yeah.
And when you are changing the history of it, you are erasing those people and what they did. And that's what I can't stand for.
I 100% agree with you. Let's talk about the fight that you wanted to talk about.
I want to talk about the Mike Davis versus Thomas Gifford fight, because there was a lot of questions, a lot of people talking about this. Michael Bisping was going kind of crazy during the broadcast, saying that, this isn't a fight, this is a beating. And, I'm not saying he was, he's pretty right.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying the referee needs to stop this. And there was a lot going on there. And, it's one of those situations. I feel bad for the guy who was the referee. I don't know him personally. I don't think I've ever worked with him, or I've ever been in a training situation with him. But this is one of those fights where you have to understand what to do and how to do it to be successful with this kind of fight. Because if you watch the fight, Mike Davis comes out and he is landing heavy shots from the very beginning. Big shots that, Thomas Gifford shows how tough he is, how he's got a rock for a chin. He took some huge punches, big knees to the head, and just kept on, sticking in the fight. Sometimes he'd take one or two steps back and then start walking forward again. The kid is tough, but there comes a point where this is that whole question of, yes, the fighter wants to go on. Yes, the fighter wants to finish the fight. And you'll get a lot of people saying that, the fighter deserves the right to try to finish the fight. I want to point something out. Just recently, in fact, about a week and a half ago now, we lost an MMA fighter from a fight. Herb Dean was the referee of that fight. And I will tell you, Herb did nothing wrong in that fight at all. I don't care who would have been refereeing that fight. That kid had to come into that fight with some type of injury. He'd been knocked out. Something happened in training. I don't know what it was, but he ended up dying of a subdural hematoma, and he took not even 1/8 of the damage that Thomas Gifford took in this fight with Mike Davis. Not even 1/8. And it's probably even less than that. And so these are the things that can happen. And a lot of people, they start to escalate the importance of an MMA fight way beyond what it is. And this kid gave everything he could, but there comes a certain point where it is the responsibility of the referee to try to figure out where's a place that I can get this kid out of the fight. And I can understand that the referee that was doing it never could find that place. He wasn't sure where, because, he doesn't want people saying that he took someone's opportunity away. He doesn't want to have it to where the fans are now booing him because he stops the fight. The UFC is upset with him because now, this is his first chance at working that, promotion, and now he never going to get a chance again. So there's a lot riding for him too, and he doesn't want to make that mistake.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier for someone like, me who's been there forever, say, nope, this is done, or do it in a way that no one understands. And I can point out that I've done that before. I've gotten guys out of fights where the fans have no idea, what's going on, or, you utilize the doctor in certain ways, and it's actually the referee's the one stopping it, but you're going to use the doctor in a way to get this kid out of the fight. And the reason you're getting him out of the fight, and this is where you and I are going to argue, so get your big boy pants on, because here it comes. When you're watching a fight as the referee, you start watching. In this type of fight, you're watching one guy. You're watching Thomas Gifford the entire time because he's your problem. Mm-hmm. Mike Davis is, he's the one creating the problem, but Thomas Gifford is your problem because you don't want him to take too much. And as you're watching the fight, you should at least in your mind have an idea of how badly is he losing this fight. Yeah. And he loses that first round 10-8, easy. It's a 10-8 round. And he loses the second round 10-8, easy. Oof. And that's with him on his feet just about the entire fight. Now, he gets knocked down a couple times, but he's on his feet most of the fight, so you can figure out that the shots he's taking are damaging. Mm-hmm. And when you watch him walk from the end of the second round back to his corner, you're looking at a guy that, he's hurting. He's feeling it. So you got to look and say, all right, what is best for the fighter? What is best for the sport of MMA and the promotion of the UFC? What is best for the fans? Okay, and you want to weigh all of these things, but the number one you're weighing is what? What is best for the sport? What's best for this fighter?
What's best for the health?
UFC?
What's best for the health of that athlete?
That's exactly. And so at that point, I can guarantee you if I was doing the fight, it would have ended between the second and third round. The fight would have been over. I wasn't going to let him go back out. Now, I know his corner is Mark Montoya, a very good trainer, a good guy, and he's looking at him going, hey, how are you feeling? And the kid's going, I feel like shit. Do you want to fight? Yes, I want to fight. And so he's letting the kid go back out because the kid's not going to tell him, I don't want to fight. It's not something that you do. And so you've got to weigh those things out. And the one thing that I try to tell people all the time is I cannot show you the end result if I don't let it happen.
Yeah.
All right. But the end result of this fight, because they let it happen, is Thomas Gifford went out on his face, knocked out by Mike Davis. And so I would have ended up stopping that fight between the second and third round. That's damage that he would never have taken. And that's what's important. See, because you can tell people, look, I cannot show you what was going to happen. But in this situation, I can, because the referee didn't do what, in actuality, he should have done if he was a really experienced guy that understood ways of getting out of this. And, this is part of the whole game. Fighting is different than every other sport. And you sometimes have to do things to protect that fighter, not from so much from their opponent, even though, yes, you are. Mm-hmm. You're protecting them from themselves because they're so mentally and physically tough. They will just go out there and die on their shield, before they'll quit.
I'm not going to argue one bit of what you just said.
Damn, look at that. I got it. I have done it. I have brought Josh over.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to point out my take on what you're talking about. I blame first the corners.
Can't.
Because
Go ahead.
I blame first the corners. The reason why I blame first the corners is that is someone that I entrust with my life. As an athlete, they shouldn't expect me to want to stop. I didn't train them this long for me to say I want to quit on the stool. And if my coach was to ask me, do you want to keep fighting? Every single time, that fighter's going to tell him yes. Every single fucking time.
I agree.
There has never been a moment in my corner where Bob's like, he's like, do you want this? And I'm like, hell yeah, I do. Like it's always been something along those lines. You better go out there and knock him out. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to go out there and try. That's what the other thing too is my relationship with Javier Mendez and Bob Cook is to the point of I would trust them I trust them with my life. They're my coaches. Everything I've done in my life for 20 years has been shaped around them being in my corner. I can't recall. It was my first fight in the UFC. I didn't have Javier Mendez, but after that, against Hermes Franca,
Gerald Strebent.
Yep, Gerald Strebent. Very true. That second fight against Hermes Franca, it's always been Javier and Bob Cook, and it was Dave Camarillo at the time, and then jiu-jitsu guys came and went during that process, or Trevor Prengley came in also. But I look at those guys as if they would have looked at me in the corner and said, "Hey, we're calling this," and I would have looked at them and said, "I can keep going," and they would have said no, I would have said, "Okay." You have to understand that those are the people in your corner, and I'm going to give an example. Buddy McGirt.
Yeah.
He looked at his fighter and said, "Hey, I would rather you be mad at me for a month or two or a couple days than you die." It didn't help things this last time, but I mean, how many times I've seen him stop fights from before, and
Yep.
You gotta say, and you gotta say that's the kind of person you want in your corner. If you know you can't win, if you've lost the first round 10-8, you lost the second round 10-8, you're not mounting any offense going forward into the third round. Like, you haven't mounted any offense for 2 rounds. What makes you think in the third round it's any different? And
you're gonna always hear people say, "You never know. He could catch him." And in this fight, Josh, I will tell you, this kid is trying. He's trying to Imanari roll into getting into legs, and every time that he actually pulls Mike Davis down on top of him, Mike Davis just obliterates him with punches, never gets close to any type of submission. And so he shows you that he doesn't have a puncher's chance. Mm-hmm. He's got no knockout power ability to knock Mike Davis out. Mm-hmm. He cannot win on the scorecards, and he doesn't have what I call a submitter's chance. He can't get this guy in a submission now at this point. And so all you're doing is putting him back out there to receive more damage for another possible 5 minutes, or that big knockout, which he took, when that's all damage that you can avoid. And you lost this fight, so what? Let's move on, and the next one will come back and try to win.
Yeah, I agree. It's better to take that loss the way it was, to take a loss like that, than for him to go out the way he went out, face down.
No.
The way he turned his whole body around and he went face down.
Oh, yeah.
And I've continued to tell people this. When you talked about, like, he would roll for the Imanari roll and just get smashed. As you're taking shots, for those of you guys listening at home or watching at home, I want you guys to understand this. As a fighter, the more shots you take, the less power you have, the less strength you have, the less your mechanics worked, the less your cardio is, the less endurance you have, all those things. It really is like a video game. When you start getting hit more, your power level starts going down. And when that goes down, you just keep getting your ass kicked. It doesn't get any better. It's very rare that it gets any better. Okay? And I'm speaking from experience, and I try to correlate like my experience so you guys get a better understanding that I'm not trying to be a hater towards somebody, or I'm simply saying there was damage that I took in the Tony Ferguson fight, and in the first round, I thought the first round was close until, we got towards the end. The second round, I just got annihilated. The third round, I felt like I was fighting in quicksand. It was never the same. It was a fog. I felt a step behind, but there was moments in the third round where I felt like I could have got to the back, could have not, like there was things, but nothing ever really happened. Yeah. That could have been a fight that potentially could have been stopped on the stool between 2 and 3. But I kept mounting an offense every once in a while and things were coming around. But it wasn't to the level of what you're talking about right now. And so for people that are at home, you have to understand that it doesn't always get better. Like it's very rare that you're going to see a Diego Corrales Castillo fight where the guy loses his mount. But you have to remember, up until that moment of round 10 the fight was close. It was back and forth. Guys were winning. Diego was probably ahead slightly on the scorecards. Then he gets dropped, comes back. But they were both so fatigued and things like that when they're both tired and they're both been dropped or rocked or sat to their butt. Going into the 12th round, that could happen to either guy. But not when one guy is clearly dominating the fight. He hasn't been dropped. He hasn't been hurt. He hasn't any of those things. So that means his conditioning is on point. Okay. He's not as tired and fatigued. He's not a step behind mentally as well as physically. All those things, he's operating at almost 80, 90, 100%, whereas the guy that he just kicked the shit out of for the last 2 rounds in 10-8 rounds, he's operating at, say, 40%, 50%. Yep. That's a big difference when you talk about the best guys in the world, okay? We're talking 2-3% is what separates those guys, sometimes less. Most of the time less, okay? When I talk about Conor and Khabib, or I talk about AJ McKee, or I talk about, Patricio Pitbull, him and the next guy below him that's fighting for the title is maybe like a 1 or 2% separation of who's going to become the champion, okay? But when you have a guy who is depleted that much, you're talking 20, 30% separation. That's
sometimes more than that.
Sometimes
and
more
than that.
And that's and so when you're talking that type of separation, there's no chance. Absolutely no chance. And that's why when you said, for me, I blame the corner because the corner needs to know your fighter. You need to know where your fighter can do. You need to understand what your fighter can do. And not to mention, that's like your son or your daughter. Well, you should know them.
This guy's dad was actually in his corner.
That's even worse.
Yeah, that's the one that I look at and I go, man, I don't know how you could do it, dude.
Yeah,
I really
that's
don't.
In no way. For me, I would look at my son, and be like, there's no way I'm stopping this fight. We'll live to fight another day. Because the other thing is this. It's like not so much that my son lost, is that my son maybe potentially could learn a lot from this loss. Train harder, do more cardio, learn the techniques better at the gym, spend, another 3 or 4 months, 5 months getting better and refining his craft. Okay, versus getting knocked out and his chin's gone, never fighting again, and his last memory will always be that he had a 1 fight or 2 fights and just got destroyed because his chin was gone. We saw it with Chuck Liddell. After he got knocked out by Rampage, it was a snowball effect.
Absolutely.
The things he used to walk through. If you watch the Tito Ortiz and the Chuck Liddell 30 for 30, after the Rampage fight, he was never the same. It was Rampage. It was Rashad, Rich Franklin. It was all these guys. Keith Jardine dropped him. Those are things that you're talking. He used to walk through, get people's punches. Now it's a snowball effect. And when you're talking about something like this, where he gets dropped, where his face goes down, it spun him all the way around. You don't know the kind of lasting effects that's going to have on him for his career. He may have a shorter career because of that 1 fight and the damage he took.
Yep. Well, it's funny because one of the guys that I did that with, we just had in Italy, Kirill Sadilnikov fought one of your teammates, Paul Buentello, long ago at Affliction. And if you go back and you watch that fight, I let it go a long ways, and he ends up with his mouthpiece out. He's never down. He's just taking repeated shots and hard shots. And eventually, you'll see me, I bring him to the doctor, but I had a little signal with the doctor, and you'll say, turn around and I wave my hands. It's over. And that was me, a signal that I had. I wasn't letting him take another shot in that fight. As soon as I stopped it and went time, I knew the fight was over. And sometimes you got to do that for the fighter. And, it's important that someone is there that understands, hey, I'll take the heat. I'll be the bad guy for this guy to be able to continue on in this career if he wants. Well,
Buddy McGirt said it, Russ, I'd rather have you mad at me for a couple days or a month or two than your family be mad at me for the rest of my life. That cuts real deep when you start talking about people in your corner and your family. That's why I think if your corner is not willing to do that for you, they should not be in your corner. That's one. Two is, I do blame the ref because there should have been, and I'm not saying like it's not a blame thing. It's more of it's a responsibility, like you have talked about that you had. You and I have had plenty of conversations when we're on the road working Bellator shows about what you feel your responsibility is, and your responsibility is to make sure that the athlete is taken care of, that he is safe, that both athletes are safe. And the way you talk about it, you're very passionate about it. I actually really admire you about that. Don't let this go to John's head if you guys repeat that to him. Okay. But it's just one of those things that I truly admire when you and I talk, is that it's important for you to consider the fact that, like, hey, these guys, they're going to live a life after sports, after fighting as an athlete. Yep. And they need to understand that you're doing them a favor. And that was one thing that I always understood. I had talked about retirement when I was like 26, 27 in the UFC. I was like, or 25, whatever it was. And I was like, oh yeah, like 3 more fights. I'm going to retire. I'm done with this. Whatever. I did it. I made it to the big time. That was my conversation. I always knew that this was not my life. This was my life for the moment, but when you're done at 35, 40, or however old I plan on being done, I had another 50 years to live. What are you going to do for those years? And you have to remember that as a fighter, as an athlete, as any athlete, pro athlete. When you're done playing your sport or competing at the highest level of doing what we're doing, your life goes on. And you need to remember that, because whether you have kids, you have a wife, you have kids, you have parents, you want to make sure that you can still live a life that you enjoy being around, be having fun with them, and being able to talk and have a conversation. And those are the things that are important in life, not the 15 years or the 10 years or even sometimes 2 or 3 years that you spend in the sport that you think you've dedicated your life to. It's not as important as living the rest of your life with your family and the ones you love.
That's the truth. Yeah, but you can go back. They actually did a study long ago with Olympic athletes, and they basically, asked the question: if you were able to be given something that guaranteed you that you would win an Olympic gold medal, but that thing that you took to win that medal would end your life 5 years later, would you take it? 75% said yes, because no one looks to the future. And we all think, and I remember when I was, 25 and 30 and competing, and it was, hey, I'm invincible. Nothing's going to happen to me. And I actually thought, hell, I'm not going to live that long anyways. I'm never going to make 50 years of age.
That was me.
I'm not even worried about it. And then when you're at 49 and 50, you go, hey, I want to continue on here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot different when you're a young man and the way you look at life than when you've had some years to think about it and you actually think about what's important. Where is it that you really do need to center your life around? Is it around this, fighting persona, or is it around, what makes life what it is, your family and other things? So
well,
it's a tough one.
You took, for myself, I took for granted the Christmases, the Thanksgivings, the having the families around. But now that I'm 42, 43 years old. Now that
You're 42 years old, mister.
Now that I'm this old, I look back and I look around when I'm at Christmas dinners and Thanksgivings, and I'm like, this is what life is really about. This is the enjoyment of having these people around you that you took for granted when I was 21, 24, 28, 32. I took for granted those. All I cared about, there was countless times where I didn't go to Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners because I had to train the next day. I remember John Fitch and I doing assault bike sprints on Thanksgiving night at 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, while people should be eating dinner with their families. I was doing assault bike sprints for an hour straight with him, on Thanksgiving. Those are moments that I always wish I could get back. I look back now, I'm like, what was I thinking? One day of rest is not going to kill you. You know what I mean? But it was in my mind that I had to do it. And as you get older, those are the things that the time with your family, time with your kids, time with your wife or your spouse or whatever it is, if you're a girl, those are all things that are important now. Like you said, when you turn 50, you're like, man, I want to live a couple more years. When I was young, I thought the same thing you thought. And I thought, like, I'm not going to live to be like 35. I didn't think I was. I mean, I was getting in trouble. I was in and out of jail. I was fighting. I mean, like, if people don't know the history on me, I'm going to write a book one day and you guys can buy it. But it's just one of those things, like, fighters don't look to that. Athletes don't look to that. Like you talked about with the poll that they took. They don't look to that stuff. And it's so important that you have corners that do that for you. They know about your relationship with your family. They know about your wife or your kids or your aunts and your uncles that help raise you and take care of you. They're look, I'm entrusting you with my life every time you corner me. That's how important this job is. No, you're not my friend cornering me. You're somebody that I'm entrusting you to take care of me and look over me, make sure that I don't die out there, and to throw the towel in. And That's important. I think in the long run, that's important because there's life after sports. No matter what fucking sport you play, there's life after sports, and every athlete needs to remember that.
You know, I want to say one thing, that there's one guy out there, and I'll give it. Trevor Whitman stopped Nate Marquardt when he was on the stool and wouldn't let him go back out. You know, God bless Trevor Whitman for that. You know, but John Hackelman, you know, you're talking about the 30 for 30 with Csac. John Hackelman did throw in the towel when Csac fought Rampage the first time in Pride. John Hackelman was gonna throw the towel in. You know, he told me that in a phone call when he fought him the second time in the UFC and lost his title. And just recently, John Hackelman threw in the towel in a fight in Bellator when he had a young fighter, Castle Williams, who was taking big shots. He threw the towel in to stop the fight. That's the kind of guy you know cares about his fighters.
Yeah,
that's what makes John Hackelman who he is.
Yeah.
So I just want to give him the props because there are guys out there that will do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we saw it with Buddy McGirt. And there's other coaches that are out there too that will do it. There is. But I want to show the significance of that. It is important that as a corner, if you're a fighter cornering your friend, they're entrusting you with their life to take care of them. If you're the coach cornering a friend, they're entrusting you to take care of them. And that's how important it is. So, all right, so let's switch gears because I'm getting a little depressed now.
Yeah, we're still going to start crying here.
Let's talk about some of my closest friends, the whole board of the California State Athletic Commission. Them and I are like this. That's how much I love these people. There's a lot of things I would like to say, but I'm going to let you go ahead and take the ropes on this, big guy.
Oh, I don't think I want these ropes, baby. I don't think I want them at all. Well, yeah, there is a couple things that is happening. They did just pass this 15% cutoff. If you weigh more than 15% of your weigh-in weight, the night of the fight when they weigh you in, they will not allow you to compete. Your fight will be canceled. And that's a huge statement. There's a lot that goes with that. And the one thing to really consider is promotions. You know, Bellator goes to California probably more than anybody. Mm-hmm. All right. And promotions now are going to have to look and say, ooh, am I going to bring my show to California where after I have, put together this card, marketed it, done everything, I could lose all these fights. I could lose my main event based upon a percentage of weight that is now unacceptable due to their guidelines. They might lose a lot of fights. California does more fights than any state by far. It isn't even close. Boxing and MMA. There is no state that comes close to how many fights are put on in the state of California. And you're wondering, at least I'm wondering, is this regulation now going to alter that? And are the big promotions, the UFC and Bellator, now going to start to go, we might want to step back from California because this might not be good for us. We could lose a lot of fights and then piss off a lot of fans.
This is bigwigs trying to impose their will and set standards to let other people let them know, hey, we have control. We have the most fights basically in the United States, and I want to make sure that everyone follows our guidelines and our rules. The problem is that this state is in such debt, as everyone knows, is that now they've just decided to lose more money instead of make more money by putting more regulations.
Very possibly could be.
To put more regulations in there. You can pretty much, I would say at the highest level, probably maybe cut in half how many times the UFC comes here in a year. And I would say for sure Bellator will probably make a little bit of a cutback. Maybe not come to San Jose much, maybe only go to LA one time a year, maybe stay in San Jose one time instead of 3 times. San Diego hasn't been on the market lately, like whatever. Temecula. Is Temecula, though, California or commission, or is that
Temecula, the Pechanga Casino, doesn't utilize their sovereignty as far as a tribal commission, and they employ the California State Athletic Commission to come cover their events. So
Got it. My question is, so does it mean the fight is off, or does it mean that they can pay a fine and the fighter can still pay? still fight.
Well, the last language that I saw and heard was they can find the fighter, or they can cancel the fight completely. It doesn't say that there is a shall or this will occur. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a choice.
Because look, if they gain 15%, if let's just say they gained 16%, I would assume that it would be a fine. If they gain 20%, then look, the fight's off. I would imagine there should be some sort of you've already regulated.
You mean there should be some gray area between black and white, since black and white doesn't work?
Yeah, black and white is very hard to. It's very hard. That's going to make the promotion stay out. If you're going to give hey, it's a 10% fine if you're 1% over. It's a 20% fine if you're 20%, or 16%, or so. Every 1% over, it's another 10% until you hit, say, like 40, 50%. Then you're like, look, it's done. If you can't stay within a 20% range, with that 15 to 20% should be fines. When you get to 20%, the fight's off. I guess that gives the fighters a little bit more of an understanding, because majority of the time, if they gain the weight, what you don't want, this is my concern, what you don't want is the fighters cutting weight the day of the fight.
I totally understand that.
That's the shitty part. And the only other thing that I can truly possibly think of is implementing more weight classes, causing the fighters to fight more. And 165 is already there.
There already are those weight classes. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that it's not the state athletic commission that is holding people back from those weight classes. They've implemented those weight classes. It's the promotions themselves that are saying, oh, we're not going to use those. Now, Bellator uses a lot of what they'll call contracted weights, which are utilizing those weight classes. They use 165, they use 175, they've used 195. And so, I mean, it's there, and it's just a matter, are they going to finally say, all right, we're going to actually have that as a division? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Well, what I like is that some fighters have already taken it out of the commission's hands and out of the promotion's hands, and they've made deals with each other. Ryan Scope and Peter Quealy Instagrammed each other, slid into each other's DMs, and said, hey, hey, I'm 170, you're 169. Why don't we just fight at that weight and not cut weight? I mean, I thought that was brilliant.
Well, it is, but see, they're not changing. You're saying that they're doing it on their own. They're not, because they're saying, okay, we're just going to fight welterweight, which is fine. I have no problem with it. That's great. Mm-hmm. But that's not a different weight class. They're not implementing that 165. Guys like, Ben Askren have been, trying to pump, for that 165-pound weight class. In Bellator, you talk about, you in the European series, BDK, Big Daddy Kiefer, he wants that 165 because he fits perfectly. He can't do 155. He kills himself to get to 155, and he knows that 170, those guys are a little bit big. He would love to have that 165, and I'd love to see it for him, but those weight classes are there. It's just a matter, does a promotion want to use them? Yeah.
I'm a little bit of a homer, because the 155, 175 makes sense. Then you have 10%, you have 10 weight class, or you have 10 pounds between every weight class, all the way up to 185. Then it jumps back up to 15 when you get to 205. And I'm okay with that. You want to know why I'm okay with that? Because the talent at 185 to 205 already sucks. Okay, and that's why I'm going to continue to say that, just because I think the 55-pound division is so stacked. You can make two really good weight classes and you have top-level fights, and I'll continue to say that. Can you imagine? Because you've got obviously Khabib, you've got Islam Makhachev, all those guys, they all cut from 180, sometimes more, sometimes less, but they cut a lot of weight. Having that 65-pound weight class would mean less cut for them, and we'd have the potential of having more multiple weight class champions. And every time you have champions, there'd be less interim titles for people to say, like,
that's the way I look at it. Because I hate the interim title.
Yeah, it's a waste of...
Everyone asks me all the time, it's like, it's just, it's a paper title. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything.
You sure? You should ask Colby Covington. His means a lot to him.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens with Colby when he fights Usman.
Look, I originally, when we had met in California, we met at that UFC Bellator. Everyone was there. Bellator sent me down and said, "Hey, we want you to sit in the meeting." I was there. You were there, right?
Yep.
You were there. Forrest Griffin was there. We were all there, and I had originally proposed. I said, look, if you implement the 165 and you had weight classes every 10 pounds, you just can't exceed the next weight class above. So then it's even across the board versus 15 pounds, 15 pounds, 15 pounds. You know what I mean? Like in those weight classes. If you had them every 10 pounds, you just can't exceed the weight class above. That would put the fighters in a position to just, everyone's equal. The guy at 125.
But see, you're saying that, and you're giving me that whole line of, you just can't go into the next weight class above.
Yeah.
At 10 pounds, that's even less than the 15%. And you're worried about guys cutting with the 15%. Tell me they wouldn't be cutting the day of the fight for that, you can't go into the next weight class.
But there's less weight for them to cut to make their weight. That's what my point is. If everyone's in that 10-pound weight class, there's less weight for them to cut to get there. So the weight it's for them to put on is not as much. Do you understand? Like, are you understanding what I'm saying?
I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm just saying I do know there are guys out there that will think I can gain an advantage here.
Yeah.
And I am going to bring myself this all the way down here, and I'm going to weigh in at this lighter weight, and then I'll just gain a little bit. I'm not going to really rehydrate, and then I'll wait all the way to the point of the night of the fight, walk in there, I'll weigh in, and then I'm just going to slug down stuff, and you're going, it's going to be a disaster for you. But you know they're going to try it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It depends. With this day and age, with the athletes, with everyone having their nutritionists, a lot of people have nutritionists. That Lockhart and Leith, they work with a ton of fighters, and they basically, I think, would talk to these athletes and say, look, you probably shouldn't do it this way. You should probably fight the weight class above. My conversations with Dan Leith, who's one of the owners, is to say, like, he's said, like, yeah, I think all the huge weight cuts, he's always talked about, it's kind of bad. But I was never someone that cut that much weight. So I never had to really deal with it. But if there was a weight class of 65, I would have taken that all day long. I probably would have actually lifted a little. I would have lifted a little bit more, put on like 3 or 4 pounds, and then just cut, because I still would have been within the range of 165 and not to exceed 175 would have been perfect. You know, but I mean, like, for me, I was always cutting from 170, 169 to 171. I was always in that weight class, and I would always just cut down, to 55. No problem. It sucked. It always does suck, because cutting weight sucks. But, you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, it sucks.
My take on it is that you'll never know until you try. And let's try this out. Let's see what they do. I would like that little bit of a gray area for the guys, so the fight's just not off, because then you end up with a problem with, like, let's just say the scale's off by a pound and the guy was on and now he's not, and now is there a fine, or is the fight just fucking off? That's not, you're talking about people's livelihoods and their family and their kids getting fed. Those are the things that concern me. Now, if you're like an Anthony Johnson, who's my boy, by the way, and I like to use AJ as a thing, who comes in 6 and 7 and 8 pounds over, no, dude. Sorry, man. If you're 6 and 7% over, no thanks. No, you deserve for the fight to be canceled. That means you didn't do any of your shit during the camp to get your weight down. So
you never know what he did, man. That's the whole point of AJ. But the other part of California State Athletic Commission. Did you happen to see that Aspen Ladd tried to get her fight with Germaine de Randamie overturned because she said there was gender bias by Herb Dean as the referee?
Wow. Why was there gender bias? Explain to me what the situation was.
Well, supposedly they went and said that they went and looked and said that Herb allows male fighters to go farther than he does women fighters. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. He goes based upon what he sees. And if you're Aspen Ladd and you get hit with a right hand from Germaine that spins you around and puts you down on your hands and knees, and you don't move from that position, you're probably telling Herb, hey, she just fuck me up. I need some help here.
Yeah, very
You know,
true.
and I'm looking, I'm like, I was very glad to see they didn't overturn it, but it was really funny. If you look at it, really, it's really not funny. You talk about gender separation. There are 3 male commissioners voting, and there was 2 females. The 2 females voted for Aspen Ladd. The 3 males said no, and that's what took it. Yeah, they almost overturned that fight. And I look at it and go, okay, do you realize what you're doing to another female fighter in Germaine de Randamie who went out and did exactly what she was supposed to do? She didn't foul anybody. She didn't do anything wrong. She went out and landed a beautiful right hand that knocked her opponent to her knees, and you're going to take a win away from her? It just didn't make sense.
Is this California State Athletic Commission?
Yes.
Oh.
These are the people that didn't win. 2 of them, none of them were going to overturn yours.
It wouldn't have mattered if it was a foul or not. They weren't going to overturn it.
And this is my whole point. I'm looking at yours, and yours was based upon what can be considered, and it was unintentional, but it's a foul.
I know.
And there was no foul in this, and the 2 women said, yeah, we think this should be overturned.
Those 2 women, absolutely disgusting.
I feel really bad for Herb that he had to go, through that, and he actually had to. He stood there and said, "I'm not gender biased."
Yeah,
and and Herb's got no freaking. He doesn't care. He doesn't have any racial at all in him. He's one of the nicest guys there is.
Yeah.
And to sit there and actually have to say, I don't have a gender bias. I looked at that and I said, man, that's just ridiculous that he actually had to do that.
Yeah, those 2 commission girls that were on, the women that were on there, were they the same that were on when I was there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Talk to me, Daddy.
Ladies and gentlemen, they should not be serving. They should not be on the board.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yeah, they should not be on the board. They should not be on the board at all. One of them asked me while we were there on the case before mine, said, what's this new thing that they're doing with the open hands and they're striking, but there's no closed fists or gloves? What's this new thing? I said, pancration. I don't think it's very new. Why are you...
Well, it's only new if you want to go before Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm just like... When she said that, I was like, great. These are the people that are about to decide my fate right now. This is great. Lovely. So, look, let's end this whole thing on a real good note, a happy note. Obviously,
please,
everyone should know we work for Bellator as analysts. And it was very nice to see several of our fighters in the top 25 of the best fighters that are under 25 years old. And who was number 1? Go ahead. I'm going to let you drum roll, please.
Go ahead.
AJ McKee,
the mercenary.
It was awesome. So
it was. And as well deserved. You got to look at, I give ESPN a lot of credit because they didn't have any kind of, there wasn't that whole, the UFC is who we cover. They were honest about it, and they made him the number 1, and they should have. There's no doubt. He is the best under 25 fighter there is, and he might be getting close to one of the best fighters on the planet.
I didn't see the rest of the list. Can you tell me? I know there was a couple other Bellator guys on it. Can you tell me who they were?
I think as far as Bellator guys on it, I'm trying to think of who it was. Pico was actually on there. Aaron Pico was on that list. God, who else?
Was Gallagher on there? James Gallagher?
James Gallagher was on there. You're right. He was on there also. I think number 2 was Sugar Shane from Arizona.
Oh, yeah,
with the UFC.
Sean O'Malley.
Sean O'Malley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like him.
Oh, he's fun.
Wait, go ahead. Speak into the mic, dude. Be a producer.
Come on, Dave.
Tell
Talk
us,
to
Dave.
us.
Number 3 was Edmund Shabazian. I don't know.
Shabazian. Edmund Shabazian is a young kid out of here in Glendale, California, and he is a stud on the ground, and he's been having good hands, so that's a good pick.
Tied for number 4 is Nasra Hakparast and Aspen Ladd.
Hasparas, yeah.
And Aspen Ladd.
And who? Aspen Ladd?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Keep going.
And then your number 6 is Macy Barber.
Macy Barber,
Yep.
female from in the UFC. She's
Uh,
a good young fighter, but we'll have to see on that one.
number 7 is Jimmy Crute.
Jimmy Crew.
Crute, Crute.
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 Yeah, he's good. Tough.
I thought you said Groot, like the
Like you Groot.
Groot.
It's like a tree.
Keep going. Come on.
Song Yadong is
Song Yadong. That's a cool name.
number 8.
Okay.
And then number 9 is James Gallagher.
Go number 9's Gallagher.
And
Okay.
number 10 is Ricardo Ramos.
Okay.
Number 11 is Michael Oleksijuk, Polish guy. Or maybe Russian.
I know that one.
UFC guy. Number 12 is Jillian Robertson, UFC women's flyweight. Number 13 is Aaron Pico.
13.
Number 14 is Angela Lee.
Angela Lee. You know what? She should have been higher.
I like her.
And dude, she is on the ground. She's fun to watch.
Yeah. I think
She
she
attacks.
probably would have got higher had she just not lost to Michelle Nicolini. I think
Yeah.
in the MMA in MMA. That was probably the only thing. But she's definitely fun to watch. I like her.
Yep.
15 is Ismail Nurdiev, UFC guy. 16 is Jack Shore, who's also a UFC guy. 17 is Montana De La Rosa, also a UFC guy. 18 is Pedro Carvalho. one of your guys.
He's under
Hey,
20. He's under
there you go.
25 years old.
Yeah, he turns 25 in August
Yeah,
next year.
Good
He's
God,
he
he
was
looks like
24
he's
when he fought. He
he
looks
looked
like he's 38. I know.
30-something years old, man. I love you,
told
Pedro,
him.
but bro, you look
told him.
old, man.
You just got to shave that head down, man.
Dude, he's tough, and you were right.
Oh,
When you
he's
told me
good.
about him, I was like, oh, and then when he fought Campos in the UK, I was like, Campos didn't look himself. I'm not ready to get high on him. But then when he fought Sam Cecilia, I was like, oh shit, you are good. You're good.
I told you. The kid's good.
So we got Pedro Carvalho, we've got Aaron Pico, James Gallagher, and AJ McKee so far. That's 4 guys. Keep going.
Yep.
Is that all? Is that all of them?
No, there's more. Number 19 is Umar Nurmagomedov, who's a UFC guy, cousin of Khabib.
Yeah.
20 is
Umar.
Umar.
Yeah, he's fucking good. I trained with him.
He said Umar, but he said it was a Scottish accent, so it sounded
Umar.
different.
20 is Thiago Moises. He's Dana White's Contender Series.
Yeah.
21 is Jalen Turner, who's a UFC guy. 22 is Christian Lee, who's a one championship guy. 20.
That's Angela Lee's brother.
Yep.
Okay. 23 is Sabina Mazo, who's a UFC person.
Sabina Mazo is very good. She's from Colombia. She actually fought Alejandra Lara and beat Lara, gave Lara her first loss. And Mazo was undefeated up until like about a couple months ago. She got beat.
24 Sage Northcutt. And 25 is Armin Sarukian. I'm not sure list.
So the guy that I obviously I'm fresh off of it. So the reason why I'm going to throw him out there is Norbert Novini Jr. He's 19.
He should have been on that list.
20 years old. He just turned 20 years old. Great performance against Fleury, and he should have been on that list.
Yep.
Those are the guys.
Absolutely
Those
should
are the guys that I've seen in Bellator that I think. Yeah, the Lee brother and sister, Angela Lee, and then the other Lee, her brother. They are very entertaining. They're both good fighters. They're both champions, I believe, at one. One is a promotion over in Asia. So I think the list is pretty good, man. They've got
not bad.
What was the girl's name that fought Cyborg after Cyborg had lost to Amanda Nunes?
Oh, Spencer. Felicia Spencer.
Felicia, is she over 25?
I think she is 26 years old.
She's tough.
She's good.
I was very impressed with her and her performance.
I was so impressed with just her grittiness. You know, if you know about her and you watched her, she's got a very good ground game.
Yeah.
She is good on the ground. She's heavy on top. She was the Invicta champion.
She's 28.
She is, it's 28. Okay.
Okay.
She's the real deal. She's going to be there for a while. As long as I'm not sure if the UFC is going to continue with a featherweight division because she cannot make bantamweight. She'll never make it.
And I'm excited to see her in Bellator.
Oh, yeah. I would love to see that because she's good. She's fun to watch.
Yeah. Like, those are the kind of girls I'd like to see Julia Budd face. The girl that comes forward, tries to press the action, like young, but still like, you know what? Pfft, I got nothing to lose. This is my title to lose. And when she fought Cyborg, I thought she was going to be afraid of her. She wasn't afraid of her, man. She tried to
Not
get
at all.
after her. I actually walked away from that fight being thoroughly impressed with her performance and just
The
her
phenom.
Yes, I was excited. I was really, and I had the fight 2-1, but you said it was a 3-0 fight, 3 rounds, and I had it 2-1. But
That's all right.
I can see it the other way too. Regardless,
you get so impressed with someone that you start to everything they do is better.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
It was. I think
She is good.
That possibly could have happened.
She's
But
good.
I do want to tip my hat to ESPN. ESPN, because everyone knows that ESPN and UFC are together, basically in bed together. But this was great. This was good to see that they're giving other organizations, the Lee family, obviously our fighters, AJ McKee, James Gallagher, Aaron Pico. Who am I missing?
Pedro
Cavallo. God, I can't even think of it because he doesn't look like he's 25 years old.
No, he's the last guy you would think is.
He's the last guy.
He's 25.
I know. All right. Well, hey, I think that today is our show, you guys.
That sounds good.
All right, my man. And then we're gonna try to drop another one before we leave to Connecticut next week. Connecticut,
Sounds good.
Bellator
Perfect.
next week. 2 shows back to back, Friday, Saturday night. Do not miss it. Frank Mir, Roy Nelson, and of course the welterweight Grand Prix. I cannot wait for that.
$1 million
fight.
on the line.
Yep, Lachem Duwa. Lachem Duwa. I want to say I can't.
Le Chemin de Wa.
Le Chemin Duwa. Anyways, 50 cents giving $1 million to the winner of the welterweight World Grand Prix tournament. That's Rory McDonald and Douglas Lima. I cannot wait to see that rematch. I'm serious.
A good rematch.
I cannot fucking wait. I want to see if Lima has mentally switched the gear and been like, you know what? I deserve to be in here. That's my title. I'm getting it back. And if Rory is
I want to see that. I want to see if Rory goes and has, one of the things I loved about Rory, as far as breaking guys down and taking away certain things that they're good at, he's very good at that. Can he do that with Douglas Lima and that low calf kick?
Well, I believe that he needs to sit down and talk to Jesus first, and when he does, he will come back, and I'm sure he will have some sort of remedy up to what he needs to do.
Yep. That's what it takes.
I'm gonna get tore up on YouTube for that.
I had a friend that used to say one of my favorite lines. He would just look and go, "Sweet bald-headed baby Jesus." So nothing wrong with that.
All right, you guys. Hey, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up. When you hit the thumbs up, that shares our videos to everyone. We truly appreciate it. Please, even if you guys don't subscribe, at least take our videos, copy the link, and share
Why
those.
would you not subscribe?
I know, but those are it's a commitment thing. People have commitment issues. That's what they have, commitment issues. If you guys
You'll
can,
like us.
just copy the link and send it to your friends. Maybe your friends will like us more than you do, and they'll hit the subscribe button. Okay? So, great show, man. This was great. I'm glad you were able to get everything off your chest that you needed to get off your chest today. All right, my man.
First the last show, now this one.
Yeah.
Talk to you later, brother.
All right, my man. I'll talk to you later, man. Great show. Talk to you soon. Bye.